All right, so we're hanging out at the Brand Being Summit, and start off with Andy. This event, in some ways, is also about how branding has changed and disruption. What does disruption mean to you today?
So Philosophy was born about 34 years ago, and at the time, it was considered a very disruptive brand. It came from the idea that this pioneer in cosmetics had. She was an esthetician at the time, and she was having a bad day, maybe even a bad month or year. She decided to go on a hike, and it hit her as a revelation, right? So what can I do from a skincare perspective that would also make people feel good on the inside while looking good on the outside? And thus Philosophy was born. It was the first time that anything like that had hit the shelves of the American beauty market, and it's still around today. I think it's less of a disruptor today, but the beauty space, I think, in general, is disrupted by things that are visual. We saw Glam Glow hit the markets a few months ago, maybe even a year ago, and they're not creating products for efficacy. They're creating products because it makes a good Instagram post. And I think that's where we're all headed, because innovation in beauty is still there, but it's even more interesting when it looks interesting as well as it working.
You know what's interesting is you talk about the origin story, the founder story of Philosophy. And part of our concept here with Brand Being is that branding has changed, and where corporations and corporate branding used to be about a brand being prescriptive and putting out messaging, today for a brand to be most effective, when you look at some of the disruptor brands and whether the different ones that are coming into the space across so many different categories, you have people who are being their brands, like living those brands and really in it. And your founder story in many ways is that. And so the challenge becomes when a company like Coty, a big corporation, buys a more entrepreneurial brand, how do you keep that or get back in some ways, instill your team or inspire the team that works on it to sort of be the brand?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was going to say that we have almost zero brand affiliation with Coty. Coty, as a parent brand, in a lot of ways, has little brand association at all because there are no Coty products. Coty owns either licenses or it owns brands that stand alone, like Philosophy. So we operate within similar to an independent company within a parent brand. So hard to answer that question. I would say how we stand out, though, and how we keep our branding is we listen to the customer. And I'm in charge of social from a Philosophy perspective, and most of our efforts are focused towards Instagram. So instead of us pushing out our branding, it's understanding from the customers, and especially our Instagram fans, what they want to see. It's not necessarily product all the time. In fact, most of the time it's not product. So we're trying to come up with things that are visually interesting, that tell a lifestyle story. And so it's almost not even telling the story of the brand or the story of the product, but rather, how do I incorporate this product or this narrative into my own life so that in telling that broader brand, broader lifestyle story that just so happens to be coming from the Philosophy brand.
Another thing I know, you personally, part of what drew you to your brand and to Philosophy is the notion of purpose and the purpose story behind the brand. And so many brands are fishing for purpose, trying to find meaning and making their brands more meaningful. What is it about Philosophy that drew you to that brand, its purpose?
Yeah, that is the reason I joined the brand. I remember a long time ago my mom using Hope in a Jar, and I thought that was really clever, the product name, but as I graduated from high school and college and that kind of thing, and my career drew me here, it was really the giving platform that Philosophy established many years ago. It's always been inherent within the brand, but it wasn't until 2014 that it was formally established. So again, going back to the founder story, many, many years ago, decades ago, our founder, Christina Carlino, was having a bad day, a bad month, bad year, whatever it was, and kind of mental health for us is in our DNA. It's part of who we are. It's part of our story. And in 2014, we set up what we call the Hope and Grace Initiative. and we raise money for community-based mental health organizations. It's a 501c3, very separate from the Philosophy brand, but Philosophy is the only organization that gives to it. And we give money solely to organizations or to bigger organizations that have targeted programs for women and families. So far, we've raised almost $5 million in 5 years. And for the size of a brand that Philosophy is, that's substantial.
Yeah.
It's bigger than a lot of the big players. But to us, it's just who we are. And what we see going forward is that now mental health is a very big issue, especially with the Me Too movement and a lot of very topical issues. We've already been doing it, so it's not greenwashing. It's not irrational to our brand. It really is who we are, so it feels real. It's why I joined the brand. I know it's why a lot of the people either have joined or have stayed with the brand, because they really feel ownership of it. And for us, that's what makes it all worthwhile.
And that I actually think is a very good example of brand being and kind of appropriate for a lot of the conversation that we're having tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.